Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 125 for Monday, January 25th, 2021. My name is Jonny, but the internet knows me as Pickles, and joining me as always is the glowing Joel Duggan. Hi, Joel.
Well played, sir. Well played. If you'd like to find out why I'm so happy, I spoke a little bit about the new living room setup in the render distance, which is the extended version of the podcast. You can become a member at patreon.com/thespawnchunks and get extra audio content every week.
Absolutely. Join Listen to the Render Distance and find our revelation that real life might actually be in Bedrock Edition. And speaking of, I'm heading back into Bedrock Edition this week, although I'm obviously heading back into Java Edition as well, because I have finally ended my my hiatus from just kind of hanging out with my wife. Now they are back in the UK, and I came back into Minecraft in style, Java Edition style, with Friday's Clash of the Creators stream. So this was a follow-up to the event that I'd taken part in, I think a little bit before the holidays, which was a advancement race between two teams of 4. This time around, it was a mob hunt race between 4 teams of 4. So a completely different kind of category, and one that I think people are expecting the folks who are more familiar with speedrunning to have an advantage going into this contest, but if you consider the breadth of the amount of mobs in this game, we were hunting down every single mob we could, including variants, and so that included all of the villager professions, zombie villager professions, all of the different varieties of rabbit, all the different colors of sheep, all of the nether mobs, and everything else besides. So we had a lot of fun spending 2 hours hunting down frantically anything we could in the overworld and the nether. I don't think anybody ended up making it to the end, because the ender dragon kill would have been kind of a feather in the cap of whichever team managed to do it, but gosh, it would have been difficult to do and concentrate on the objectives at the same time. So my team was myself, Azuma, Sliced Lime, and Avomance from the Legacy server, I believe. So, we had a pretty broad team facing off against 2 teams composed entirely of Hermitcraft members and another team that was exclusively from the Legacy SMP. And we came second in the end, which I was really happy with. We started off really strong, fell apart a little bit towards the middle, but then had a really good comeback towards the end. So, in the end, despite coming second place, I was still pretty happy with our performance.
Nice. That kind of stuff is always really interesting. I was tuning into one of Sliced Lime's streams this weekend, and he was playing stuck on a specific axis. I know I've mentioned this on the show before. I just don't remember whether it was render distance or the show proper. But those kind of like still Minecraft, but just setting up your own box of rules within the game really changed the vibe.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like the 2D Minecraft format is really quite interesting to me. It's kind of like you're forcing yourself to play Terraria in Minecraft in a sense, which is a little bit easier to do in Terraria because the world is set up for it. Whereas I can't imagine only being on one axis in Minecraft and 2 axes, I guess technically, if you want to get mathematical about it. But but only being able to dig down in a line and trying to find diamonds around where you are and, get resources that way. It must have been kind of an interesting challenge. So I think I'll have to check those out myself.
So with your mob run there on last week, like, are you guys all on the same channel to talk? Was it push to talk? Like, how does that, because I do a lot of content with just one other person, but very seldom do I do podcasts with more than one person, but I've never done like a group stream.
Yeah, each team was split up into their own individual voice channels. So the 4 of us were in one voice channel, and obviously the other teams were in different places and in different worlds, but all using the same world seed. And the fantastic thing the Monumenta team, who put together the event, have done is connect all of them via a plugin, so we can see when each team gets each advancement, because there was a custom advancement pack set up so that anytime anybody killed one of the mobs that was on the list, then it showed up as an advancement, and that's how they were able to track points. We had a scoreboard that worked on basically every person's screen had everyone's score on it matched up. And within our voice chat, I'd mute myself if I was talking exclusively to my Twitch chat, but the rest of the time we were just firing off like, I'm going to go and get this. This is my objective. I just killed a pig. Let's, avoid pigs from now on unless you need food. Keep going this way. and just kind of coordinating things on the fly from there. We couldn't really plan strategy ahead of time because we hadn't seen the world seed before, so it was really just going to be a matter of heading off in one direction as far as you could and seeing if you ran into a biome that had anything unique. So yeah, it was a really interesting challenge and a lot of fun doing something competitive once again.
Did every team have a Mojang dev on the team? Because I feel like that would be at least a knowledge advantage, right? It's like, what biome are we in? Oh, sliced. What's in this biome that we need?
It's funny, but I feel like most of us were so, immersed in Minecraft in general that we probably knew the game about as well as Sliced Lime did. I mean, he was quick to point out that he is the tech guy. He's the one who makes things run, and he's the one concerned about server performance and things like that. But as far as like actual features of the game and stuff, he doesn't really have a great deal of say. Like I made a joke at one point about putting in a feature request for blast furnaces to be able to smelt things other than ore blocks because I needed to make smooth stone faster to craft something, and he was like, "Yep, I'm really mad about that, to be honest." Like, I would absolutely love blast furnaces to be able to smelt something else, but not something I get any say on. But he was a really good sport about it as well, and it was great to have him on the team.
Oh, that's fun, man. It's fun. They do on my server because data packs.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I can see myself looking into that kind of stuff in future because I just want faster glass. That's really all I need. And trading with librarians doesn't always cut it.
No, exactly. And I think for us, it's because I did the same thing recently with a data pack that I'm still working on because it's not hard, it's not difficult, it's just time consuming. And that is I'm using the stone cutter as a wood cutter. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, the ratios are a little bit better for things like trapdoors, but most of the other recipes are basically the same. Yeah. It's just that it's faster to put a log into the stone cutter and get 4 stairs or whatever it is. Like, I can't remember the number of planks that you would get, but in the same way that the stone cutter makes cutting stone stairs and slabs more efficient, just for time and whatever. I also like the noise better, so I just we'll be using that, but it's not something we dropped into the server on day one. Like, we've all had basically 3.5 years of doing it the old-fashioned way. So It's like, dues have been paid. I've been waiting with furnaces for ages. So I don't really mind, making glass and ores and things melt like twice as fast in a blast furnace. I think I may have actually also had the increase of fuel consumption be the same. So It's not like it's cheaper. It's just faster from a how much time do you have to play Minecraft this weekend perspective, right?
Yeah. It definitely helps for quality of life stuff, which I think is something that you're thinking about more and more once you've played the vanilla game for a longer period of time, definitely. And speaking of setting your own rules for things, because having mentioned this a little bit earlier with the challenge Sliced Lime was doing, the rest of my weekend has been taken up by a Minecraft Dungeons speedrun tournament, with a very specific set of rules for that, because recently the Minecraft Dungeons speedrunning scene has seen a couple of really interesting skips found. So it was originally theorized that this was possible, but somebody found a way to do it so that you can skip through different levels by just manipulating the way you put in inputs with a controller and a mouse, and it actually allows you to start a level on one difficulty, like on the lowest possible difficulty, but then enter another level at the same time, and so you load up a level that you're not even supposed to be in yet on difficulty level 1. And so this has led to basically the world record for beating Minecraft Dungeons in the fastest time being cut in half, and perhaps even less. And so I've been following the community a little bit. They didn't use the level skip glitch at all for this tournament that was happening over the weekend, which was basically just the heats to decide who was going to the semifinals and finals that are now going to be happening in February. So there are now distinct categories for playing with level skips and without level skips, because there would be no contest between the two of them. This all led to Mifa and another runner called Birdie, I believe, beating Minecraft Dungeons in 14 minutes and 21 seconds on co-op, because the only levels they need to play are Creeper Woods, sort of the opening level, which usually gets them items that allow them to run through levels faster. You get Boots of Swiftness and that kind of thing, and then hitting up a couple of the the levels with the optional bosses so that you can get hold of a couple of extra items, and then you basically go straight to Obsidian Pinnacle, the final level of the game, play that on difficulty 1. You get weapons and stuff that can allow you to beat the boss in about 5 hits of a regular sword, and they've got some tricks that allow them to skip through other sections of that level as well, meaning that the world record for beating dungeons is now, like just over 14 minutes, which is wild to me as somebody whose first playthrough took about 6 hours. But then again, I was leaving no stone unturned at that stage.
I don't think I've completed a level in less than 14 minutes,
right?
Including the tutorial.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, maybe the tutorial is a bad example because you're kind of going slow and learning, but like things like Creeper Woods or other things, like I know I haven't completed anything in less than a half an hour because I'm like you, no stone left unturned, right?
Yeah, absolutely, which is pretty much the antithesis of speedrunning. They're just trying to complete everything in the fastest time, and they have it down to a really kind of specific formula, the kind of stuff they want to get throughout the run. And in a tournament setting, it was a little bit different because obviously they couldn't just reset if they didn't get the gear they wanted. So there are a couple of like safety strategies, like picking up the vendor in Creeper Woods so that you could get items and have like a broader selection to choose from. But yeah, it was a kind of best of 3 format. So, they would run a match against each other, and the person with the quicker time would win out, and then they'd go to a second match, and if that person won the second match as well, that'd be it. The first 2 matchups we had between the first 4 runners basically came down to one person sweeping and winning 2 games on the trot. But then the second day we had another 2 groups of runners play, and they both went to the deciding match. They both ended up doing 3 matches, and so we really got to see such a broad stroke of how badly the game can go for some of them, because some of them were getting really bad luck in terms of the equipment that they wanted. They were getting really low power items, and so they were going into the final stages of the game really underpowered and getting the snot beaten out of them in some areas. So yeah, a really, really interesting time and great fun hosting some of these guys who are all good folks and fantastic sports when it comes to this stuff. So we're going to be seeing the return of that sometime in the first weekend of February is where we've slated it for. So
interesting.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that.
So do you have, I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but a ballpark idea of what the average run is? Like, are they all under 20 minutes and then the 1421 is just like the fastest, or were there a wider range?
Well, without level skips, I'd say the range kind of went between 30 and 40 minutes. And a lot of the time with if they were trying for world record attempts, they would probably get the gear that they got on some of these runs and then just restart immediately because it wasn't what they wanted. A lot of the time they said when you're leaving Creeper Woods, if you get a boot of swiftness from that pig that drops loot halfway through the level, and then you get a boot of swiftness at the end of the level, so you can use both of them to run through the next set of levels really fast, that's when you know you're on pace to potentially, hit one of the kind of podium positions on the leaderboard. But then if you don't get those, you basically just reset because you know you've got no chance of beating some of the faster times. And so a lot of the time when you watch them practice on Twitch, half the time they don't even leave Creeper Woods because if they don't get the items they want, they just go back in with a new character and try again. So yeah, it can be a bit of a grind when it comes to that stuff, but obviously if they're aiming to beat a time higher than, or less than 28 minutes, then obviously they've got a lot of stuff to do. Most of the runs we saw yesterday, I think, came out to about 35 minutes on average, which is still very fast, obviously, but nowhere near any of the world record levels at this point.
I'm having a giggle over Cosmic and Ginger in our live chat discussing who would be the slowest runner.
Yes,
in terms of the new slow run competition, like who can take the longest time to get through the game.
I mean, I think I've already done that with the Barefist Steve playthrough as well.
Maybe, yeah. It's like digging your way out of jail with a spoon, right?
Absolutely. But that's my weekend, and I'm probably going to get back into Java Minecraft stuff this week, so I'll have a little bit more to say next week. How about you, Joel? What have you been up to in Minecraft this week?
I have built my first drawbridge, and I am very proud of it. I'm really happy with the way things are going on the Citadel. It's been a little while since I've been gripped by a project where I just cannot wait to get back on stream. And for those of you that don't know, I really don't play Minecraft offline. I tend to only play it when I'm streaming, just time constraints, etc. And plus, it's fun to share all this kind of stuff with viewers and listeners. And had some reference. I've got a Pinterest board. It's just my name on Pinterest for anybody that wants to have some quick reference because it's all public. It's all easy to find. I wasn't modeling it after any one particular thing. It was more like, let's look at a bunch of different towers, a bunch of different drawbridges. I saw one that like a gate to a keep, which is what this is. And then I completely forgot. Oh, right. Sometimes moats don't have to have water in them. Sometimes they can just be a giant ditch, right? It's just meant to slow, adversaries down and get them in a position where they're low and you're high and they're done, right? And so I've waited long enough now in the game that we've got things like the grindstone and actual chains and logs and barrels that look like they have metal strapping around them that look like reinforced, logs for holding up a drawbridge. And I'm really quite happy with the way that it turned out. I feel like, although I know I kind of rib Minecraft a little bit for leaning very heavily into medieval, castles and things, because I'm now building that way. I'm quite enjoying the palette that I get to work with, and it's come out quite well. And then we moved on to the keep, and did like a lot of designing. It's been slow going because I'm not sure if you've done this, and you might be able to chime in actually because of your giant castle and because of Old Town and what you've got going on the survival guide. I've not been building kind of like any one thing through to completion, with the exception of maybe the front gate.
Yeah.
I've been sort of bouncing around the town and doing a little bit here, a little bit there. And even on this keep is such a big build. I'm not just doing the main hall. It's like, well, let's get to the main hall to the point where I've made enough design decisions that I can then decide how tall I want the towers to be next to it. I've put in the floor. You can't really see it in the screenshots that I've shared, but I used something that I did find on Pinterest. I really cannot claim I came up with this idea. I wish I did. But it's a combination of furnaces, blast furnaces, and polished basalt in a floor pattern, and it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool pattern, and it's repeatable. Like it's like a 5x5 tile pattern that you just repeat, and it's really, really cool. I'm really happy with it. I'm glad I found it on Pinterest, and like just doing stuff like that and having the knowledge now to what's the word I'm looking for? Like tweak, like not sub block, but like little things like knowing that if you put enough stairs stacked on top of one another, your fences will not attach to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get a portcullis that doesn't attach to the walls. Just those Minecraft knowledge tricks that are old enough and you've been playing the game long enough that you can really make things look almost as if they could move, because it's not a working portcullis, of course, but I do have a portcullis in the main gate, and it is designed as if it could work. And I'm pretty thrilled with the way that it turned out. I've had some challenges with the main hall in terms of design and trying to figure things out. And a person in my chat reminded me that, most staircases in medieval builds would be up towers. They'd be spiral staircases inside of towers. And I was like, oh, because I was having trouble. Like I wanted to put this nice big staircase in it to get to the second floor, but I didn't want to sacrifice the back wall, which would probably be either something really decorative, like a big tapestry, or maybe a big window would be nice. But I realize now that, the stairs being there was going to obstruct that. But of course, now we've moved the stairs into a tower. And, the only drawback so far that's a bit of a sacrifice for the function of stuff like that is that I find that a lot of my towers have to be a little bit more squat. I'm not a fan of like the one wide spiral staircase in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Because I find like I just get dizzy going up and down it. So I've made it too wide, and it's less of a spiral and more like a 3-tier, like a 3-flight kind of 180. But I think it's more pleasant to go up and down that way. But it's been super fun. I've had a lot of great input from the chat. Some people that are very knowledgeable about castle design, either having built castles before in Minecraft, or they like that kind of stuff. They probably play D&D, so they know, the terminology. They know things like the towers and the stairs, or they'll say like, oh, hey, like, where's your kitchen going to be? It's like, oh, that's a good call. I didn't, never thought about that. Stuff like that we've been able to kind of like slowly plan and adjust. And it's been an interesting experience to plan it with your knowledge of Minecraft so far as to how you want it to go, and then having to make adjustments on the fly where you're like, okay, well, I need this tower of stairs to go here. that's where I was going to put the kitchen pantry. So we have to find a new place for that. And in some ways, it actually works out better. Like I know we talk an awful lot about the puzzle nature of Minecraft, the ability to, trying to think, like just you're more creative when you have some restrictions.
Yeah.
And so having built, this thing with the hall size and player scale and having this wall, I'm okay with moving the wall like a block or two just to make it look nice, but I don't want to move the wall 6 blocks. I kind of said, like, this is the edge. I don't want the keep to be larger than this. And so I'm trying to work within that space and making design sacrifices when, like, the roof angle looks good, but then parts of the wall stick up through the roof, so you can't use it that way. Like, so it's been a really fun experience. I've really been enjoying the time working on it.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge working with player scale for stuff like that, and also working with things that feel comfortable, because obviously for those like thinner medieval spiral staircases you're talking about, player scale would dictate that this is probably not going to be more than 1 meter wide. Like, I've been to some castles around the UK where you can climb the towers, and the staircases are not only narrow, they're also very steep. And so, it's the kind of thing that you are stepping up, basically, like, 40 or 50 centimeter steps. And so you really have to stride to get up some of them. But obviously, in Minecraft, that more or less equates to, the height of a normal slab anyway. But you're looking at slabs which are also a meter long, which these steps wouldn't be. And so it's kind of, you have to take a few liberties anyway, but also you probably want to broaden them a little bit, because otherwise you're just kind of fiddling around with your WASD or like turning the mouse constantly to get up there. It's sort of, it doesn't quite feel as comfortable to play through as it might look realistic. So yeah, you do have to make a few design compromises there, but it sounds like you've got it dialed in at this point, and from these screenshots it certainly looks like you do.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think tower, would think a 3x3 inside space, like a single column up the middle, and then just your stairs and your flat blocks going around the outside.
Yeah.
I've got a 5x5 inside space. The tower itself is 7x7, but then I've got a 5x5 inside. So my staircase is 2 blocks wide, and it feels way more comfortable. And the landings are 2x2. And again, it does not feel quite as claustrophobic. So I think we've talked about that before with, like, why it doesn't feel like you're going through a meter thick wall in Minecraft. It's because you walk faster. Like, your walking speed is faster than the average human in real life.
Definitely.
And I think that's true of going into smaller spaces. That's why a 1x2 meter space in Minecraft, which would feel small in real life but not claustrophobic, feels like you're touching the walls in Minecraft.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, it feels like your shoulders are dragging down the sides in a 1x2 mine shaft, right? So but yeah, it's been a really good experience, and I'm picking some tips and tricks from other people. Like, the roof ridges that I added to the keep, I definitely stole those from Mythical Sausage. So tip my hat to all the people that I've been inspired by over the last little while. I think a lot of the barrel work, I'm sure I've seen Whip do. So, like, if people want to know some really cool tricks, like really simple things that you can do to make your medieval stuff look that much more intuitive and thoughtful, I would check out Whip and Mythical Sausage. Like, I definitely have been going to their Pinterest boards and going like, oh yeah, that's how he did that. Okay. And not necessarily copying the build, but thinking like, all right, well, I like how he handled that roof, or I like how he handled that signpost, like just the subtle things that I'm not so good at the sub block stuff. So I need practice with that.
Yeah, no, I will happily second both of those recommendations, so absolutely. Before we move on to the news, I want to highlight one more thing that I saw this week, and it kind of goes back to one of our previous discussions about how the end could be updated in future while maintaining the kind of desolate vibe and updating it in exciting ways. I thought we often jump to flora and fauna instead of considering the terrain itself, and that was prompted by this fantastic post on Reddit by Mateozaki27, which I think was just titled Good God at the time, but they had generated a custom end dimension with some more of the topography and terrain variety that you might see in something like a shattered savanna or a mountains biome in the overworld. And so a lot of the end landscape has been replaced by stone with just a covering of end stone over the top, but there is an end city amidst all of this, and it's kind of surrounded by this mountain range with chorus fruit growing here and there. And I really like the way that looks, and I do wonder if potentially as they take a look at the end and updating that in future after the success of the Nether update, this is potentially a direction they could consider going, because after all, if you think about the end sort of being the closest thing we have to outer space or the moon, when you actually consider the landscape of the moon, the seas and craters that it has and impacts from asteroids and that kind of thing, I feel like a landscape like this might even feel a little bit more space-like and like you're exploring a more alien landscape than it would be with everything just being open and flat the whole time.
I'm going to let the Marvel nerds correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the planet in Guardians of the Galaxy is called Nowhere. And it's like a weird gravity anomaly where like it looks like the planet's in pieces. Yeah. And everything is kind of held together by like some sort of anomaly. And so there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of like floating around. I want to say this was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But like this kind of thing really makes me think about, and this is a big if there's a big terrain or world height change with caves and cliffs, does that mean that the other dimensions, specifically an easier dimension to change, like the end, could have a much higher Y value, and thus allow for islands above one another, below, like you could have a couple of hundred blocks of floating islands vertically, as opposed to what is essentially a pretty even plane of floating islands.
Yeah,
that could create a whole new way to get lost.
Yes, a whole new way to get lost, and potentially a way to save yourself if you're unfortunate enough to start falling into the void, which I'm sure has happened to most of us at this point.
Having longer to save yourself from that would be good.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the news, though, because we have a bit of news. We have the first snapshot of 2021, and I think we're welcoming back the development cycle and getting some new stuff to play around with. In Java Minecraft, at least. So we have Minecraft Java Edition Snapshot 21W03A. Once again, link to the changelog and all of the patch notes is going to be in the show notes at minecraft.net. It has added the Glow Squid. Controversial. The Glow Squid does not yet spawn naturally. You can find spawn eggs for them in the creative inventory. Glow Squids are, as it says in the changelog, well lit and can be seen from even far distances. When they are killed, Glow Squids drop glow ink sacs. Glow ink sacs can be used on signs to make the text super visible even at night, and it also works with colors. If you can craft a glow item frame by combining a glow ink sac with an item frame in a crafting table, and any item in a glow item frame is once again perfectly illuminated even at night. Using an ink sac on the sign will remove the glowing effect, and axolotls will attack any glow squids they see, so glow squids beware. This update has also added Glow Lichen, which is actually nothing to do with the Glow Squid. It's a separate block, a dim light source that generates in caves. Can be obtained by using shears, similarly to vines, and bone meal can be used to spread it along block surfaces. One other thing that's been added in this update is a crafting recipe for dripstone blocks, which can now be crafted from 4 pieces of pointed dripstone. And there are a bunch of bugs, a lot of them related to shulkers, which are listed in full on the blog post at minecraft.net. Minecraft Bedrock Edition also saw a beta release for this Caves and Cliffs update. So the first Bedrock beta of the year has arrived, containing 2 features from the upcoming Caves and Cliffs update: dripstone blocks and skulk sensors. Once again, these features are still work in progress, and you can access them by joining the beta and toggling the experimental features toggle in the settings.
Do you want to just grab the squid by the tentacles and discuss the big one in the room? I mean,
yeah.
This is the voted mob.
How do we feel about the Glow Squid?
I like the way it looks. You know, I mean, it doesn't look like it changed a whole lot since we saw it at Minecraft Live in the fall. And I was fine with it then. I mean, you can see it from far away. I'll put a giant disclaimer here. I spent maybe 10 minutes in the snapshot. And because you have to spawn them in, I don't think they currently generate naturally in deep oceans yet, right?
Yeah, no, you only spawn them in using spawn eggs right now. So yeah,
Right.
I expect they will be in deep oceans. They are planned to be in deep oceans, but yeah, they don't spawn naturally anywhere. Presumably because, I mean, terrain might still be a factor here. They might still be waiting to see where this stuff spawns. They might be deciding if is it going to spawn in caves or not. So
Right.
yeah, potentially we'll end up seeing a variety of locations for it once it's fully integrated.
They don't look as derpy as regular squids. Regular squids have like the white eyes, kind of like wall-eyed look. These ones have, I guess, glowing eyes.
Yeah. And
It's harder to see the face.
Instead of the incredibly toothy mouth as well, they have a kind of glowing orb at the base of them by the tentacles. So that I think tends to provide a bit of a different look, maybe slightly less threatening look than the squid, because I've seen a lot of people who are newer to Minecraft see the toothy maw of a regular squid and assume that that's something that's going to eat them, when in actual fact squids are the most passive things
And have beaks, not
Yeah.
not teeth, right? Like, squids, not kraken, you know.
Yeah, a little bit of creative license there being taken by the art team.
I don't know if it's temporary or not, but it is the same model as far as the geometry goes, unless there's something subtle that I missed. But I think I even thought at first it might have had more tentacles, but it's the same. So I was hoping that it might be something a little bit different. Like, you know, some squids, or technically I think all squids, 2 of their 10 tentacles are longer than the other 8. And that would have been kind of cool to see. But I also understand that, you know, there might be some limitations there in terms of how the squids animate, because they do still have, even though they look better than regular squids, they have the same derpy animation. I spawned one in and it kind of went in circles in one block for about a minute before it did anything else. And it was like, okay, this is a little bit wonky. And so I'm thinking to myself, they probably also have the tendency to beach themselves the same way that regular squids do. Although we may not see it as often, because one of the issues that I find with squids is that they're often running ashore in rivers, whereas you don't see it quite as often in oceans because they have a little bit more room to pathfind to. And so because glow squids, I believe, are only going to be in oceans, not rivers as well, although they might, like you said, they might spawn in caves. It to me, hopefully will lead to an eventual kind of rework of maybe the pathfinding or the animations on the squids, so they're not quite so, we'll say, immersion breaking, you know. Like I find that, like, there's other animals, like say fish, that they'll still die if they get into weird situations where the water block is doing something funky, but most of the time the fish don't kind of beat their head into the sand until they die, whereas I find squid tend to do that quite often.
Yeah, it would definitely be an appropriate time to revisit the way squid move, for sure. But yeah, I think the main difference with these is the particles that they generate. They aren't so much glow as sparkle squids, is how I've been thinking of them, because they kind of give off almost end rod style particles, little kind of star or diamond shaped kind of particles as they go, which I think is quite an attractive effect. Like it was actually quite pleasing to watch, and people were joking around about whether or not they were going to hypnotize players or not, and whether that was actually going to be an in-game effect. But to be honest, they were just much more pleasant to look at than regular squid. So, like you, I think I like the texture quite a lot, and I think the particles are kind of fun. Hopefully, we won't see too many of them introducing too much lag and so forth. But I think that's the kind of thing that potentially you can turn off in menu settings and things like that. I'm excited by the Glow Squid having actual drops with functionality, and our main discussion topic later is going to focus a little bit more on these, but I feel like glowing sign text is kind of cool. They recently added, obviously, all of the different dyed colors for text on signs, but there are ultimately very few combinations of text and wood color for signs that actually go together well enough that they are readable, which is obviously a problem for things like accessibility, but also maybe doesn't afford the level of customization that players would want from signs. Enter this glowing ink that now allows you to effectively turn the brightness all the way up and hopefully increase the readability of that text. Also allow you to read text at night, which is going to be good for map making or, just bases with signs everywhere. If you want to do a little bit more stuff with lighting, or if you're leaving areas unlit, still being able to read the sign text on your build chests that are out there in the middle of nowhere during the night is going to be potentially a really good change.
I played around with this very briefly, and I mean, for the lack of a better way to put it, it was night and day.
Yeah.
Like, I did a dark oak sign with white text which you could not read at night without a torch nearby. Like, it was nearly discernible. Yeah, it was like it was very, very hard to see. The white text didn't necessarily glow. It doesn't cast a light. It doesn't look like it's neon, but it's like the brightness has been turned up.
Glowing item frames are also really cool for that. I think the main thing we're going to see these used for is people who want even lighting on map walls, because right now, to light up a map so that all of the lighting on it is even without light sources, coming from all over the room, casting different shadows on them, you do have to light them from behind. And so you'll find a lot of map walls get put onto glowstone or sea lanterns or anything that you can use as a lighting block to support the item frame. And now you can effectively do that without the light sources at all, which, it's kind of weird. Again, this is the thing we're going to get into in the main discussion. It's still kind of weird to me that the item frames don't actually give off any kind of block light, but hopefully we'll start to see this being used in fun ways. And I've seen a lot of people asking for the glow ink to do more, like, for example, having dyed wool also glow, so that anything else that you can apply dyes to could also have the ink applied to it, and you could potentially use those as light source blocks as well. I'm not entirely sure about that as a suggestion, because I'd argue wool is maybe the least useful thing to convert into a light source. We already hide light sources under carpets all of the time. So anywhere you've got wool, you can potentially hide a light source under carpet, and it's not going to look much different. It's also kind of difficult to tell where a light is coming from if it's just applied to a regular block. And I think this is why they've resisted putting, having glowstone dust increase light from a block or something, like how Carpenter's Blocks, the mod, does it, where you can just effectively add glowstone dust to one of these blocks and it acts like a custom light source. I think it is then difficult to tell where that is coming from if there isn't any kind of visual or aesthetic change, whereas these glow item frames very much look like they're glowing.
And I should point out, because this took me a minute to figure out, I put a glow item frame down and I was just like, I don't see the difference. And it took me a minute. You have to put an item in it.
Yeah.
And it's the item that glows, not the item frame. And I was like, oh, okay, that's
you'll
weird.
You'll also absolutely see a difference if you put them underwater or in caves. Because, again, they don't produce block light, so it's kind of weird, but you effectively have something that looks like it is unaffected by the darkness of the space around it. Putting them, on the surface, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference. But at night or in a cave, definitely the difference is noticeable. Put a regular item frame next to a glow item frame, and then set the world to night, and you will easily be able to tell which is which.
Yeah, the thing I was curious about, because they don't really give off much, I was kind of hoping, I don't think it's light level 7. I think it's more like 3. I'm thinking, to me, it's more like the kind of light that you would see from like an ender chest, I think gives off 3, or is it 5?
I think it's 3. It's pretty low.
It is low, yeah. And I've got a map wall in our modern city, and as you mentioned, it's got sea lanterns behind the whole thing, just because that was the easiest way to make it look good, and provides light into a nice build room at nighttime. If this gave off more light, so if it was a brighter thing, there are some real opportunities for people that wanted to create their own map art, to create their own light source designs. Anything from, you want text on a screen, on a computer screen, you want a bigger display, like maybe you've created a battleship or a sci-fi scene, and you want to use that to have some sort of glow effect, or I just think doing something in the end where you've got the void, making a custom map, and then using specific texture designs to create shapes. You could probably do some very cool stuff with these glow item frames from a build perspective as a really awesome detail. It would take a long time because you're dealing with a 128 by 128 design, but it would be very cool.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the amount of interest there's been in cyberpunk builds and having a sort of holographic marquee around the front of a building that doesn't have to be made out of individual blocks and can be lit that way. I feel like it's not out of the range of what players can do right now. The glow item frame just makes it a little bit more convenient, and if you have a 1 block thick wall, you don't have to have like lighting blocks set into it the entire time.
Yeah.
There's some potential there that's gonna lead to a couple of little quality of life things for builders, really. Moving on from this, just so we don't, cannibalize our main discussion for later. I'm not entirely sure I see the point of crafting dripstone blocks right now without a way to farm pointed dripstone, because what we're seeing here is, the reverse of what I would expect, because the pointed dripstone is really the more functional of the two, and while I can understand, wanting to be able to craft a block, I don't see the dripstone block as a particularly desirable one, whereas pointed dripstone is the one that can produce lava and water sources and can potentially damage mobs and, could be used for traps and all of that kind of stuff. So I would like to see the reverse happen, if possible, and have a way for dripstone to, if not be crafted, then at least form renewably. People have pointed out that maybe having a water source above a block of dripstone could lead to the dripstone glowing as though, it's effectively forming out of the mineral deposits coming from the water coming through porous rock, which would be an effective way to do it, and I think is maybe going to rely on dripstone being more integrated into, future designs of caves and terrain generation as it plans to be changed. But I'm still kind of curious that they haven't got a way to craft pointed dripstone, but they have a way to obtain dripstone blocks. It sort of seems backwards to me.
I agree. I think a water source above a dripstone block should create pointed dripstone going down out of that block to a certain point. Whether it reaches a point where it won't grow anymore, whether that's 7 blocks or whatever. And then the player can decide, do I want to leave it there and then get free water and collect it with a cauldron at the bottom, or do I want to harvest the dripstone and let the whole thing start all over again? Time consuming, but if you have enough of them, then it's the kind of thing it's like bamboo. You plant 3 and then you go do something else for an hour, and then when you come back, you've got enough for lots of scaffolding.
Definitely, yeah. I'm interested to see how this stuff develops, and obviously this is just an early snapshot for the year. We're potentially looking at some of the more long-awaited features like cave generation and stuff being touched, hopefully within the next couple of months. Once again, I'd encourage people not to rush the devs on this kind of thing, but we know they've been working on it. Lady Agnes has tweeted screenshots of working on lush cave generation towards the end of last year, so hopefully we'll see some of that soon, and we'll have more to bring you in future episodes.
Moving on into email, we can get those from spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. So if you'd like to write in with your thoughts about the Glow Squid, please do so. We've got the first email coming in from Cyberfolk, and this is a quick response to mob switch clarifications. Hi guys, big fan. Just to clarify about mob switches, they work by filling in the mob cap, typically by moving hostile mobs which don't despawn into the spawn chunks. They've moved into our podcast? Oh, no, wait. I see where you're going.
I see what you did there.
This only stops new hostile mobs from spawning. They don't cause existing mobs to automatically despawn. You guys were also talking about using game rules to simulate this. There is already a game rule. It's do mob spawning equals false. Ilmango has a great recent video about mob switches, and Cyberfolk provided the link, which we will have in the show notes as well.
Yeah, my understanding was that previous mob switches had been made using despawnable mobs, as you said. So shulkers were one example of that. Vindicators from woodland mansions that were effectively tagged to not despawn. And more recently, I think zombified villagers have been used because Mojang has fixed any issues where villagers that you'd already traded with and were zombified would then be just a hostile mob that would despawn under normal circumstances. So zombie villagers are potentially an easier way to farm mobs that you would put into a mob switch instead of having to go to the lengths of transport that Vindicators and Shulkers require. It's an interesting thing and still something that I might dip into in future. in response to the game rule thing, the problem with the do mob spawning game rule is that it disables all mob spawning, and that doesn't differentiate between hostile mobs and others. It means that you don't get any sheep and cows and so forth spawning in your world either. So while it's good for testing environments, it's really not great for just running a game rule and disabling it on your server. I don't think that's what Cyberfolk was suggesting, but like to test stuff like that, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it also applies across all biomes if you apply the game rule, and all dimensions, whereas hostile mob switches potentially apply per dimension and also work within individual mob caps. So I don't know if Guardians are technically an overlap between hostile mobs and aquatic mobs, but I have a feeling that you would still get Guardians spawning if you had a hostile mob switch disabling, stuff like creepers and skeletons and most of the mobs you'd normally encounter caving in the overworld. Likewise, you wouldn't see sheep and cows and so forth not spawning elsewhere in the world because you had a bunch of zombie villagers in your spawn chunks. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit more nuance to this, and yeah, it's useful to have new hostile mobs not spawn for sure. I've been watching a lot of Doc M recently for Hermitcraft, and he's building a tunnel bore right now, so an automated redstone slime block flying machine that can duplicate TNT and use it to blast out a large area underground. But of course, the problem then is he's creating a lot of caves, which then leads to unlit areas where hostile mobs can spawn, and he talks about really wanting to build a mob switch on the server that he could switch on and off whenever he goes into building flying machines like that, and it would mean not encountering creepers that could potentially ruin hours upon hours of work he spent building this fairly complicated but ultimately very fragile redstone contraption.
Yeah, I was looking at things like mob switches, and I feel like it's still, to me, a larger hassle. Like I don't know what would take less time, like just sealing up the thing that I'm working on in the nether so that no mobs come in, or having a mob switch. And just for my own clarification, and this is because I don't delve into this, I don't know, would a mob switch in the spawn chunks affect the nether too, or does the mob switch have to be in the nether?
I have a feeling nether mobs might have a separate mob cap, and it also depends because zombie pigmen are technically maybe neutral mobs, but they still count under the hostile mob cap, so there's some variety there. It also depends if you're on a single-player world or a server, and whether the spawn chunks are still loaded when you go into other dimensions, which on a server they would be, but on a single-player world I believe they aren't unless you have certain settings enabled. So yeah, there's a variety of things that are potentially standing in the way of you using them most effectively.
We have a pretty knowledgeable community, and Christopher in our chat says correct mob cap is per dimension.
Yeah. So you'd have to make an individual one specifically for the nether if you wanted that to happen. And yeah, there's some interesting nuance to this, but it's obviously something you want to look into really late game, and only then if you're attempting the kind of projects that you don't want hostile mobs around for under any circumstances, which I find is rare enough for me that I feel like it's not necessarily worth the hassle.
Yeah, and with us on the Citadel, we've got several hostile mob farms that would just break, if there was no mobs spawning in them. And you'd have to, with a server, you just have to up the communication behind the scenes and making sure that, if you're going to use a mob switch, that everybody is very good about turning it off when they're done using it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that it is novel that it exists, and I'm sure for various technical players it's worthwhile to have, but even around my museum, to be honest, like, it would be nice if creepers didn't spawn and potentially blow up my exhibits, but I still feel like it's on me if that happens. I've been playing the game long enough that I think I can handle a couple of creepers, or at least be able to repair the damage fairly easily if they do any, and that aside, it means that if I can gather a little bit of XP if I need to, if I if I end up avoiding sleeping for whatever reason, I can pick up a bit of XP from those. That can repair my elytra a little bit if I've been flying around a whole bunch. Sometimes having that stuff around, while maybe inconvenient to have to stop and fight some stuff, ultimately ends up giving you some reward at the end of the day. It's a more desirable experience than you might think. Moving on to our next email, though, this one comes in from Atom Balm, who is a landscape artist member of our Discord. Thanks so much for the email. The subject here is the copper aging mechanic. Hey, Double J. That's our new band name, apparently. Atom Bomb from the Discord here. I've been sitting on this idea for a minute, so please forgive the lateness, but I have a balanced work-reward solution to the weathered copper issue. I'm also a Bedrock-only player, so please forgive my Java ignorance. My idea for the time management problem most players are voicing about the copper aging process is to 1. Place a first stage copper block anywhere you want. 2. Wait until it oxidizes to the degree you want. 3. Wax it to preserve the oxidation stage. 4. Place copper blocks adjacent to the waxed block. Copper blocks placed adjacent to a waxed block would age no further than the adjacent waxed copper block, no matter how much time passes. 5. Wax the new stalled copper blocks. 6. Place more unwaxed copper blocks adjacent to new waxed copper blocks. And 7. Repeat until you have the amount of weathered copper blocks at the stage that you want. I think it's a good work versus reward balance, as well as a simple solution, meaning it doesn't require complicated redstone or otherwise technical solutions. Chunk Deuce, Atom Bomb. Well, thank you so much for that creative sign-off. Now, I misunderstood this at first. I was thinking it was just going to be you wax one block and then you can place a maximum of 6 blocks around it at a time, and then you'd have to break those and replace them. But I think what Atom Bomb is suggesting here is that those blocks would then be waxed, and then you could place even more next to those and just kind of exponentially grow the amount of copper that you had. I think the main idea here is that waxed copper effectively acts as a stall for anything else that's aging around it. So if you have semi-weathered copper that's waxed, any copper blocks you place adjacent to it only get to that semi-weathered stage, and then I guess take on more of the waxed property if they're adjacent to those blocks. It's an interesting concept, Joel. How do you feel about this one?
I like the thought behind it. Like, I like the work versus reward rule, of like wanting to come up with a solution, but not having it be a make easy button, right? One thing I was thinking about, which I don't know, is how technical is the clock once you place down a copper block for it to be weathered. Because if it's very precise, then if you have one semi-weathered copper block and you place a copper block next to it and just wait a second and then place the other one, then as each one weathers, it will essentially lock itself, kind of like down the line like dominoes.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a really cool solution to have like this one key block that's waxed. So you have to wait for the one, but then after that, you could have as many as you want, which means that like you could have, if you set it up right, you could have, is it 4 stages or 3? It's 4.
It's
right?
four total if you count the initial stage. So it's
right.
Like ordinary copper, lightly weathered, semi-weathered, and then fully weathered.
Right. So you could have a single block of each stage as your keys, and then you could have a line of copper placed next to it after you've waxed each individual one. So once you have your main blocks, don't break them, then you can wax them and then use those as kind of like a way to cascade a specific stage. You still have to wait. Like, you still have to wait for that stage to happen. There's no way to rush it. So I like the idea.
Yeah, it's got potential. It reminds me most of leaves not decaying if there is a log nearby, which I think in the past has ended up producing a lot of lag because they're effectively ticking every block to make sure that that there is a log nearby. Yeah, so that has the potential to introduce a little bit of lag, but I think that has been improved a little bit in more recent updates. So yeah, there is potential for something like this. I'm not certain if the mechanic necessarily feels all that intuitive. And if people are building in the way I think Mojang wants people to build copper roofs, where they are effectively just building the entire thing out of normal copper first, and then taking out blocks and waxing them as they go to preserve them in state, then potentially that's where you're going to see a little bit of clash with that kind of mechanic, because people might expect the blocks to weather further and then be wondering why they didn't. And I think the problem there is in Minecraft not really having any in-game communication about how some of these mechanics work, and them all being effectively explained by players themselves. If they're not intuited naturally as part of gameplay, you have to go to the Minecraft wiki to look up how that stuff works. And I feel like it might be slightly too complicated for players to feel out on their own. So aside from potentially performance issues, that might maybe be the reason they'd avoid a mechanic like this. But it's an interesting one, and it's good to know that people are still workshopping ideas for copper aging, because I know this is an issue players might want to see a little bit of, community feedback feeding into the feature before it gets to full release.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that I want to try and build with copper and weathered copper and semi-weathered copper, but I'm still trying to figure out, like, am I just going to be that person that creates a field of this stuff and sets an alarm clock on my phone to say, come back,
Yeah, come back in 3 days, I think.
In 3 days or something, to make sure that you've got it. Like, that would, yeah. And if you miss it, like, how many people are going to be stuck with reams and reams of fully weathered copper because they forgot or missed the opportunity to go wax it when they wanted to?
Yeah, I'm still in favor of using an observer and one of those sort of ender pearl stasis chambers that you see Etho using, where it effectively, as soon as one of the blocks converts, maybe choose one at random, and that activates a trapdoor that allows an ender pearl to impact with a block, and then you get teleported back to your copper field in the spawn chunks, right ready to harvest anything that's then turned into the next stage of weathering. I feel like that's probably the way I'm going to end up doing it in the long run if I want the blocks to be pre-weathered ahead of time.
Yeah, probably too. Last email, which is probably going to lead into our main discussion this week, is from Alexander the Great, GR8, which I thought was very clever. Diversifying lighting with the Glow Squid. Hey, Joel and Pix. In the latest snapshot, glow squids were added alongside glow ink sacs. However, I'm a bit disappointed by the current use of glow ink sacs. The feature to light up signs with the glow ink sacs did not seem to work in any testing I did in my snapshot world. And while the glowing item frames are cool, how often will I be putting item frames in a dark place where I want the item to be framed up and glowing and stand out? What would be neat would be to add some of the lighting which would be crafted from glow ink sacs and regular ink sacs, called, say, black light. This new light source would be functionally identical to sea lanterns, but have a darker aesthetic. I noticed that light sources are currently in the game either have a very light, see sea lanterns and rods, soul torches, and lanterns to an extent, or have an implied orange glow, see torches, lanterns, jack-o'-lanterns, redstone lamps, shroom lights, etc. It would be neat to diversify the lighting options to allow black or near black block to emit light without having to conceal jack-o'-lanterns under black carpet. Want to hear your thoughts on this? Catch you in a flash. Winky face. Alexander the Great.
So this leads into our discussion: lights that aren't lights. And this is an interesting one. Especially having played a fair bit of Minecraft RTX recently, I can certainly think of one instance in which lights which aren't lights can still be lights, and that's where this black light idea kind of appeals to me, because having a realistic lighting environment not only allows for colored light, which I think is one of the places that vanilla Minecraft is always going to have a deficit. I feel like the reason you see all of these lights which have a very kind of either pale or a more tungsten warm orange glow to them in the block texture is because that's the only color of light Minecraft vanilla has. And having anything else emit that light of a different color kind of emphasizes the stark contrast between the light source block and the light it emits, right? And so even with stuff like, soul lanterns and soul torches, campfires, that kind of stuff, it still emits the same color of light, and you can sort of forgive it because you just assume, well, it's burning sort of white hot, and that gives the same impression. But having effectively a sea lantern but with the inverse color palette, you find yourself getting into, well, how is this still producing such a warm glow to it when the light source itself should feel like, ultraviolet or something? It should feel like you're in a laser tag place. And so, while I think I'm in favor of the creative range that having more concealable light sources gives you, I still don't know if vanilla Minecraft is the right place to have light sources of so many different colors and different designs like that. But I think this sort of leads into a little bit of discussion about the glow stuff that we skipped over a little bit in the news, where glow item frames, while they do appear to visibly glow on the wall, don't actually produce any block light. And as a result, the effect is much more subtle and either stands out or completely fades into the background and looks like a normal item frame, and there really isn't much in between. So the utility of them, especially as far as player functionality is concerned, is relatively limited right now. And so we thought it would be worth diving into this and seeing how we feel about it.
So I'm thinking that one of the things that you could use this non-block light emitting light source in a glow item frame for, a lot of times people use item frames, and this is without any kind of like data pack for, like, say, a armor stand or whatever. But if you wanted to have an item flat on a surface, or, you know, to simulate like a plate of fish or something like that, and you're in a build where you don't want to have block light level 15 or something, or the torches don't work for your design, it would be kind of cool if all this work went into this build and you finally put your plate of fish on the table and you can't see the fish because it's too dark.
Mm-hmm.
A glow item frame would be just enough to maybe light that up and have it look not like it's glowing, but that it at least doesn't disappear. It's kind of like the light glitch that happens with upside down stairs. You know, like, by all intents and purposes, the roof of my keep, the rafters, should be pitch black. Like, you should not be able to see up there. But because the stairs are upside down and up against other stairs, there's a little bit of light that comes through, and it doesn't break the immersion, but at least lets you see the detail work that I've put into the rafters without having to put torches up there everywhere. And I feel like there's a delicate balance that you have to walk, because players are so used to light equaling block light in Minecraft. And I know that I get very used to and then get very confused when there's a Minecraft update and Optifine has not caught up, because I very often use a torch in my offhand so that not only I can see what I'm doing, but my Twitch chat can see what I'm doing. Because in the Nether sometimes it's just dark. You know, that tunnel I made out of blackstone, you couldn't see anything, you know? But if I had a torch in my offhand giving off not block light, but just ambient light in the game visually, it helped a great deal. I feel like there's probably some epic builders out there that are going to find some really cool uses for this. I do find the level of light that it gives quite subtle, and again, disclaimer, I've only spent maybe 10 minutes in the snapshot, but I didn't find it that useful off the top of my head. But then again, like, do I want it to glow like the sun? No.
Yeah.
You know, because then if you have this really cool moody storage system, well, I guess the idea then is that you don't use a glow item frame. You know, like, I'm struggling to find the use case for this. And I feel like glow lichen might be easier to use than the glow item frame. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of on board here. I think we'll get to glow lichen in a second. I had one more thing I wanted to say about the glow item frames and glow ink in general, is that, like the Glow Squid itself, this is very much an aesthetic addition to Minecraft and not one that really has function. And I feel like that's going to rub a few people the wrong way, because people are very interested in seeing more functionality added to Minecraft, which means things like block light that affect mob spawning, or drops that are crafted into other things that maybe make, you know, redstone components or other things. And this is very much an aesthetic thing on a sub-block level as well. This isn't even, you can craft like a whole block like, say, honeycomb blocks were, where it's like, well, at least we have a building block that we can get out of this. And so this time around, it's only really affecting luminosity of signs and item frames, and like the Glow Squid itself ultimately doesn't end up being much other than an aesthetic change. And if the Glow Squid is just all about aesthetics, in all caps spaced out, then that's cool. I think it's interesting for it to have a very specialized kind of path into this, when, you know, we have things which have a more broad use, like how we've seen amethyst shards being part of a telescope crafting recipe, and also tinted glass, and also a whole new range of blocks, and, you know, potentially, if we get them further down the road, crafting recipes for toughened calcite as well, you know. And I think maybe if the Glow Squid is all about aesthetics, then that's fine. It would just be cool to know if that was the developer's intention for it, or if they had more stuff in mind for it, and to what extent the aesthetic direction could be pushed with the same line of thinking that's gotten us glowing item frames and glowing sign text. So I'd love to hear, once again, community feedback on that would be really cool to see where else the aesthetic line could go. Glow Lichen, though. So it feels like a counterpoint to Glow Berries for me. Glow Lichen gives off a very low light source. I think it's 7, which is not enough to block mob spawns. So again, as far as functionality goes, that as an addition doesn't help us much in the mob spawning region. It's not the kind of thing that's going to prevent you from getting mob spawns in caves where Glow Lichen is growing on the walls. But I think you can maybe make a case for players using it to, say, light up the area inside of a mob spawner with Glow Lichen growing all over the walls so that you can see that everything in there is working right without it having to be pitch black. And even if you have tinted glass so that doesn't let light through, you can still see into the spawner and see the effect of everything. I think you're going to find a lot of people using it for the kind of stuff I'm really interested in, dynamic sort of mood lighting in cave builds. I think it's going to be really good for that, where having a torch with a light level of 14 but having to bury it further down into a cave, like putting light sources in a hole somewhere so that you get a lower level of light ambience in the room. I feel like Glow Lichen is going to allow for a bit more of that to happen. I don't think we know if it grows naturally yet. It can be grown artificially with bone meal, but I don't know if it's been confirmed whether it spreads the way vines do, or if it's just going to hang out on the wall. If you put one block of it, it stays there as one block.
You can use bone meal to spread it. I know that much.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe as far as the functionality goes for now, but it'd be neat to be able to just pop it down in a room, and if it doesn't spread the way vines do, and you don't have to surround it with string, even better as far as I'm concerned, because I'd like to be able to paint with light in Minecraft a little bit more instead of having to, go through all of these sort of more compromises in order to get light levels as low as we want.
And put string places where you don't want vines to grow or moss to spread and stuff like that. Yeah. The thing that I noticed about the Glow Lichen, which I can't seem to discern right now, because I was wondering if it would be something that could be waterlogged. Like, I know it grows in caves, but does water wash it away?
Okay, so interesting fact about this. Right now in the snapshots, if anyone's playing in a snapshot world, there is a bug you can exploit that allows you to place water in the nether by waterlogging Glow Lichen. It can be waterlogged and is also currently... presumably this will be patched because water isn't supposed to be in the nether at all. But there are some properties of it that allow it to be waterlogged, and so people are messing around with it in the nether in their worlds.
Well, that's cool because I think that offers a nice alternative to Seek Pickles, which have light levels of 6, 9, 12, and 15. And so this being kind of like in that low end of things, you might want to light up a brook or a pond or a fish tank or something like that, but maybe you either don't want a pickle in it, or the pickles are too bright, and you want something a little bit more subtle. While we're on the lichen, I like the design of it. Like, I mean, it's a different looking block, and it looks like lichen. If you've ever, lichen obviously comes in a bunch of different varieties, but generally it's kind of like a grayish green, a little bit of blue in there. And while I like the way that it looks, and I like how it goes on top of other things, it also doesn't match things like mossy cobble and mossy brick. So you're adding to those things, and it works well if it's on top of them. But if you go next to them, it looks like a completely different plant, which is fine because moss and lichen are different plants.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, like, I'm always looking for color harmony in the game, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same color. But often I find like having enough green in a block speckled will be just enough to make it kind of all jive together. And I didn't find that this worked very well in that way. However, if you go to a taiga biome, not always everyone's favorite, but the minty grass color in taiga biomes and Glow Lichen look pretty snazzy together.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we could see people using, lichen to just layer on top of cobblestone to get a mossy cobble that feels closer to the grass color of something like a mountain biome. I feel like that's potentially a way to go with it. Plus, I found that those nether sprouts, the really short bluegrass that you have to shear from warped forests fits really well with that aesthetic as well. So I can see doing a really interesting cold biome vibe with a few more of these plants that have been introduced recently, just because they don't have to have that bright green that you get baked into the texture of mossy cobblestone and mossy stone brick. So potentially there is room for something like that in there. And yeah, I think Glow Lichen is cool. It will probably end up, I would assume, generating in some of the caves that we're going to see added soon. And I think glow berries seem like a much more obvious light source, probably on the same light range as torches in terms of block light. They're probably looking at 14 or 15 block light, whereas lichen is a lot more subtle. It's light level 7. So I think that's going to lend a lot of different ambience to exploration when you're going into some of these new caves. And they were talking about how they had to have some of the ore blocks glow to light up areas of those larger caves when they were demonstrating cave generation at Minecraft Live, and that they've been looking for ways to light up caves so that you get that feeling without them having to make such a radical change to ore blocks, and potentially make mining a lot easier because you can see where the ores are. And I think Glow Lichen is potentially, if not the only solution, then one of the main solutions we'll be seeing for them from implementing something like that.
And I'm trying to look it up right now quickly, but glowberries I think have a higher light output. Unless we don't know.
I don't know if it's confirmed yet because we haven't seen them in a snapshot, but I have a feeling, just judging from the screenshots we've seen, that they are they're going to be about equivalent to a torch or a redstone lamp, I would say.
Yeah, we've got a to be determined on the Minecraft fandom wiki. There's no entry on the actual wiki for them because I don't think we've had a snapshot to confirm. But yeah, like that again sounds like, between sea pickles glowing at a higher level, maybe glowberries glowing at a higher level than having the glow lichen be at that lower range. Similar to, like, I've wanted to use things, and I believe there's things like ender chests, and what are the other things that are low glow that you don't think about much because they're not bright enough to use as an actual light source, but they're good if you want something really subtle. The drawback with, of course, ender chests is that they have the particles for the purple particles that they kind of suck into themselves. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on it. Enchantment tables glow? Do they have a light level?
I don't think they do. I think that some of this is different on Bedrock versus Java as well. Like blue ice on Bedrock gives off a light level of 5, which is something
really?
I only discovered when I was exploring my RTX world, and I found an incredibly glowy iceberg at one point, and I was like, okay, that is a choice because that absolutely does not happen in Java. As far as lighting blocks, you have things like soul torches give off a light level of more like 10, which is low enough to not melt snow layers, but still high enough to light up, areas against mob spawning.
Yeah.
You just have to place them more frequently. Redstone ore, when you touch it, gives off a light level of 9, although temporarily because it basically turns itself off a random amount of time afterwards. The upcoming candles give off a light level of 9 as well. Sea pickles, if you put 2 of them or 3 of them together, I think gives you a light level of 9. Regular single sea pickles give you a light level of 6. Respawn anchors are 7. Redstone torches are 7. Things like magma blocks, I think, give off a uniform light level of 3 now, where previously they didn't have any light level, and there was a bug that meant they would effectively kind of pick up the light level of blocks placed nearby. Things like brewing stands and brown mushrooms and things have a single block glow that is really not enough to light anything around them, but the block itself gives off a one-piece block light. So it's, there's a range of things, but so many of them are not the kind of things that you necessarily want around. They sort of ruin the ambience you're trying to create by their presence, like you said, with the ender chest giving off particles. So I think it is good now that we're going to be seeing a little bit more atmosphere in caving, that we get lighting to match that at this stage.
Yeah, I do, to Alexander the Great's point, I know we're not going to get a function. I shouldn't say never, but I find it unlikely that we'd ever get a situation where you could use glow ink sacs to make anything that you want glow. But I kind of feel like maybe the opposite would be nice. And I think it was Will Run for Fun in our chat mentioned something about Quark where you could dye glowstone. So you didn't change the color of the light coming from the glowstone, but you changed the color of the glowstone. So the texture would be blue or green or red or whatever. And then kind of like make you feel like it's red light or blue light. And that's what I do all the time in my nether builds is that I put red, orange, or yellow carpet over regular white light to kind of like fake it, and then I use stained glass. Now, my stained glass texture is seamless and does not have the little dashed lines in it. So it does, if you hide the edges, really look like a ambient glow of like orange or something coming up a wall. So dyeing the actual light sources without changing the light color, because that's not possible, would be one solution for that. And I think maybe a better one. Like I'd rather be able to dye glowstone than use something like a glow ink sac to then make whatever I want glow.
We're still in the early stages of this as well. Like we're still potentially going to see a few changes, and community feedback now that we know the Glow Squid drops glow ink could potentially lead to a couple of other things being implemented in the near future. I kind of agree with Alexander the Great's point about how often you're going to put item frames in a dark place where you want the item in the frame to stand out. And going back to one of the things you said earlier, we don't know, I haven't done enough testing to find out if the glow item frame can be made invisible, which I know isn't necessarily a survival feature if you don't want to use cheats, but a lot of people now using things like the armor stand data packs that allow you to pose armor stands also has a functionality that turns item frames invisible so that you can have, a shovel resting on a crafting table or a piece of steak on a table or something like that. And I wonder if hiding these item frames but allowing the items to still look like they're glowing is potentially a way, environment builders, map makers, that kind of stuff could use those to their advantage.
It's almost too bad that item frames require a block attached to them so that they will not break off.
Yeah.
Because you could have, I'm thinking in terms of like, sea lanterns and not sea lanterns, like Chinese lanterns, like little floating lights in the sky, because between candles coming, which we haven't talked about at all, and also the ability to have like other items glow, like you could come up with some really cool, interesting, intricate ways of not lighting your build, but like mood lighting your build, I guess is the best way to discern to the differences. I'm really curious about this. Like I want to be clear that I don't want to sound too negative on it because it's so early in the stage, but I'm just really curious to see how Mojang is going to differentiate into your point a clear way for the player that yes, this glows, but it's not going to stop creepers,
Yeah.
And also give enough aesthetic oomph where it's more like there's more variety to it, because like a lot of the stuff that, like to your point, doesn't block mob spawns or has this ambient glow, it's just too low, or the block itself is, we'll say, unappealing to the general population, so that it doesn't get used. Because like there's stuff that you've mentioned in the last 5 minutes where I was like, I forgot that even emitted light, like brown mushroom block, totally forgot about that, and we are getting to a point where there is just so much in the game now, and I know that people are always clamoring and excited for new things and new blocks. Like I forget half of the stuff that's in the game, and so it's nice now to defer to the hive mind of the constructive, feedback and the passionate players that will be, able to look at stuff and do some neat things. One last thing before we wrap up, that I'm curious about is things like the text on signs. I know that people have used signs in builds and subblock builds for like details and things like that. I'm now curious to know, like, if you can get colored text on a sign to show up in dark situations. Like, what if you're hiding most of that sign? Like, what if the idea is to have that text kind of like floating in the background behind something, or like through a crack in a wall, or like, I feel like there has to be a way to have some sort of cool design on that sign that isn't necessarily like your average, alphanumeric keyboard stuff, and then use that as a glowing feature in your build. It's just so early that I'm still just like having these moments of like, oh yeah, you could use it for that. So it's hard to really predict and form an opinion on. Like, we get a lot of email where people are like, what's your opinion on that? It's like, I don't know, because it's so new, right?
Yes, but we'd love to get more emails with your opinions on how you feel about the Glow Squid, about Glow Item Frames, Glow Lichen, and any of the stuff that we've discussed today. Joel will have the email address for you one more time in a second, but I think that is where we're going to leave this episode of The Spawn Chunks. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, consider putting some value back in. You can do that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks, where joining our community gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. Pledging at basically any level gets you into the Discord. You can listen to the show live as it is recorded, and you also get us closer to our next milestone goal, which is a monthly Minecraft audio hangout with our patrons, where instead of talking about what we've done in Minecraft, we talk about what you've done in Minecraft. We're currently at 223 patrons, which is up from last week once again. Thank you so much to everyone who's hopped on board recently, and special thanks, as always, go out to our content engineers, General Patton 82, Greener Canuck, Hunter 555, Jumbo Sale, and Yitz for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at The Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram, but personal recommendations are by far the best way to share the podcast. Just poke a friend in the arm from a safe distance, tell them about The Spawn Chunks and where they can go to listen to it. Where might that be? On iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Honestly, wherever you can find a podcast, we are there. You can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is linked on thespawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Jonny, but online I go by Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where I attempt to make sense of this crazy and wonderful game in a series called the Minecraft Survival Guide. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, doing behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide and other series, and I'm the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. Aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolios at joelduggan.com. You'll also find links to my other podcast there. It's The Citadel Cafe at thecitadelcafe.com. Imagine that. Talked about WandaVision last week, as well as Kim's Convenience. A lot of fun on that show with Brockett. You can find me at Joel Duggan on social media, and of course, Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I am going to be playing more Minecraft and more other things. Who knows? Stay tuned.
Thanks for visiting The Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and there's a lot to like in.